Righty. Good morning, everyone. My name is Katie Lowers. I'm with Alaska Executive Search and Bradison Management Group, and we're super happy to be partnering with AEDC for these monthly webinars. So thanks for having us, and we're happy to have Dave here and sharing all this good information. So it's great to connect with you all and have a good webinar.
Thanks, Katie, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Tara Knuckleby. I'm the Development Director here at AEDC. Unfortunately, Bill was unable to make it today, so I'm stepping in his place. First, we'd like to thank Alaska Executive Search and Bradison Management Group for their sponsorship on their webinar and the continued support for our organization. Today, we have our guest speaker, Dave Karp with Saltchuk Alaska. Dave is the Senior Vice President and Managing Director for Saltchuk Alaska and also serves as a board member for AEDC. Thanks for joining us today, Dave, and I'll pass the ball over to you.
Great. Thanks so much to both of you. And thanks everyone for joining today. Thanks to AEDC for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about our company and what we're doing here in the great state of Alaska, as well as maybe sharing a few thoughts on what the past year has been like and maybe a little bit of little pontificating about things going forward. Just real quickly, I just want to say that our affiliation and my affiliation in particular with AEDC is a big part of our business. We're happy to be involved in Anchorage's economic health, and happy to be rejoining the board and staying involved. So again, appreciate the opportunity just to share today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Saltchuk and our family of companies. I'm going to hopefully not death by PowerPoint here, but probably half a dozen or so slides in a very short 2.5-minute video that gives you an overview of our operations in Alaska, and then hopefully have some time for Q&A at the end. But my hope is that this can be sort of conversational and, folks will find it interesting. Saltchuk is a name. A lot of people ask right out of the gate, what does Saltchuk mean? Saltchuk is actually a Chinook trading jargon for saltwater. Our company has its roots in the maritime business. It's a family-owned business, owned and managed, based in Seattle, but very much a family in the truest sense of the word. The principal shareholders are the daughters of the original founder of the company. And it is very much run like a family-owned business, starting out with its roots right here in Alaska, and at the Port of Tacoma, founded in 1982 with the acquisition of Tote Maritime, which we all know about. Throughout the state of Alaska, we actually have close to 1,500 employees now. Lots of activity throughout the state, and I'll get into that a little bit. We certainly consider ourselves, if not the most complete, among the most complete air, sea, and land transportation network serving Alaska. And we try to do it in a manner that really focuses on providing essential services to the people in the communities that we serve. Go ahead, Tara. Tara's helping me advance the slides today so I don't screw it up. I think talking about our company, there's no way that we could do it without highlighting our values. One of the things that the founder of the company told me the day that I came to work for the company in 2006 was we always wanted this to be a place where we'd be proud to have our children work. We've seen that come to pass over and over again in my 15 years with the company. Heavy emphasis on safety, reliability to our customers, and then of course our commitment to not only each other as coworkers, but protecting the environment and the communities that we serve. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. Before I get into Alaska specific stuff, I thought it might be interesting for folks just to have more of a global overview of Saltchuk as an enterprise. It's basically in excess of a $4 billion revenues company. Really, our emphasis is operating historically in the non-contiguous U.S. states and territories. The vast concentrations of our business are in Alaska, Hawaii, and Florida, south into Puerto Rico, the Caribbean, and the Bahamas. When we look at the company from a global point of view. You can see this is sort of how the lens we look through. Air cargo, not only air cargo, but maintenance services for aircraft. We have a low hire cargo in Hawaii, 145 maintenance repair station in Hawaii. So chances are good that just about any passenger aircraft that you fly to and from Hawaii in the narrow body range, including Alaska Airlines, the maintenance there is being done by Saltchuk company employees. We do all the work for Conoco and BP, or excuse me, Conoco now, up to the North Slope, have been part of the shared services agreement for a very long time. And then a couple other cargo companies, Northern Air Cargo here in Anchorage, and then Stratair out of Miami, flying south into the Caribbean, the Bahamas, and all the way down to Lima. We have a wide body freighter service with the Boeing 767s. It's kind of fun to go to the Miami airport and see the traditional knack paint job on a much larger version of an airplane. On the marine side, you'll recognize some of these names. Cook Inlet Tug and Barge operating in the inlet. Foss Maritime has been in Alaska for years. And then Young Brothers and Hawaiian Tug and Barge are in the Hawaiian Islands. On the petroleum side, this is definitely a growing part of our business. Most recent acquisition was Alaska Petroleum Distribution up in Fairbanks. Delta Western is a long legacy brand here in Alaska. In Hawaii, petroleum distribution at the retail level is something that we really had a lot of fun with. When you go to Hawaii and you stop in at a Minute Stop gas station, those are Saltchuk owned companies. And then we're also up on the North Slope. I'm just kind of skirting over some of the highlights here. Tote Maritime, Alaska, I think most Alaskans are familiar with, and we have a model that's very similar to that, with a 2-vessel operation going between Jacksonville, Florida, and the port of San Juan, Puerto Rico. And then Tote Services is a ship manning and technical advisory service. Lots of different things going on there. Tropical Shipping is our international shipping division. Again, these are vessels that serve primarily the Caribbean. They're smaller container ships hitting a lot of the smaller ports throughout the Caribbean and the Bahamas. And then Carlisle, on our logistics group, we've got Carlisle Transportation, which most Alaskans are familiar with. Recently acquired Nani Global Logistics, which is John and Mary Whitty's company. It's operating off the Coulis Air Guard base, or the old Coulis Air Guard base here at the Anchorage Airport. Shoreside Logistics is out of Florida as well. So that kind of gives you a kind of a more global view of our operating companies. But now I want to talk more specifically about Alaska. So go ahead to the next slide, Tara. And this slide kind of shows you what our operational footprint in the state is. You can see from Ketchikan all the way to Dutch, all the way up to Biavik on the Seward Peninsula, the interior. We've got a lot going on across the state. You can see on the bottom of this slide, these are our flagship brands in Alaska that most people see. One of the reasons that you don't see everything branded Saltchuk is because each one of these companies on acquisition and going forward really has its own, very special brand. A lot of these companies, I'll talk about this more, but a lot of these companies are family founded and family owned. One of the reasons we keep the brands, besides the fact that they're strong in the market, is because it sort of pays respect to the founders and the folks who really built these companies up. We really thrive on being a company that can be as vertical as our customers need us to be. We don't necessarily impose a vertically integrated model in our companies or on our customers, but we certainly have the capability to do it, specifically through our logistics arm. I like to tell people we can be a great Swiss Army knife if that's what our customers need us to be. But if there's individual things you need us to do, each one of these companies operates with its own leadership team and a high amount of autonomy in terms of being able to deliver on its individual customer promises. So I'm going to show you a somewhat dated video. Videos are, that's the problem with videos, is sometimes they're outdated as soon as you make them. So some of the folks have moved around and whatnot, but this 2.5 minute clip here just gives you a sense of our operating footprint in Alaska, and it's kind of fun to watch. So let's go ahead and look at that.
By air, land, and sea, Saltchuk companies connect Alaska communities to the rest of the world. We transport essential products from Tacoma: groceries, cars, building supplies, which are then distributed by our other companies to communities large and small.
People don't really think about where my groceries come from or how does my car get here. Total Motion provides not only a link to Alaska, but a link to Alaska from the rest of the world.
A big part of that is gasoline and diesel and fuels that people need to run their cars and snow machines or heat their houses. We are a pretty big lifeline to a lot of communities around Alaska.
Northern Air Cargo is the state's largest all-cargo air carrier, delivering fresh food and supplies to many rural communities not on Alaska's road system. On the North Slope, our companies also provide maintenance services to aircraft that transport more than 240,000 oil field workers each year. And no matter how large Saltchuk's family grows by acquiring new companies, we are still driven by our values: safety, reliability, and commitment to our people, communities, and the environment.
How do we look out for each other? How do we be safe? How do we be productive? How do we be efficient? So it really resonates with me to be part of a company that still holds those same values true.
In Dutch Harbor, the country's busiest fishing port, Delta Western provides 60 million gallons of fuel and lubricants to most of the fishing fleet and many Western Alaska villages. And like all of our companies, with superior customer service.
We treat them like not a customer. We treat them like our own family. I mean, get to know them, kind of give them a little bit of space to stay longer than just fuel and go.
Going the extra mile is what we do. And as Saltchuk grows, we still call ourselves a family business, driven by our values, always striving to be the best, not the biggest in the industry, and with a commitment to Alaska for generations to come.
Oh, let's only make them watch it once. I indicated before we watched the video that it was a little bit dated, not just in terms of personnel, but it strikes me as I watch the video that it really highlights sort of the fluidity of our business when it comes to capital investment in the state too. The airplanes that are profiled in this particular piece have all now been replaced with newer, more modern aircraft. When you look at the tote ship, you'll notice it's missing the big green fuel tank on the back that people are becoming accustomed to as we enter into the final phases of the LNG conversion for totes Orca class vessels. So there's been a lot of reinvestment in the companies over the years, and that's one of the things that I'm really proud of, is that the owners recognize that in order to continue to deliver world-class products and services at the end of the supply chain, reinvestment is really important. One of the things that is a lot of fun too over the years is we've been contacted by a lot of reality TV shows just because of the nature of the work we do. So it's fun if you ever want to go on. And most recently, Cook Inlet Tug and Barge had a really great piece profiling them on how they provide ship assist work at the Port of Anchorage in heavy icing conditions. And I'm sure if you just get online and Google Cook Inlet Tug and Barge in Alaska, you can find it, and it's a piece that gives those of us that work for a company a lot of pride and shows off some of the frontline support. And there's also been a lot done lately with the Northern Air Cargo team, so fun to look at if that's something that you're interested in. This slide is actually a really good illustration of how the company has grown in Alaska. So these are all this is kind of our acquisition timeline, what our strategy is as a company. And one of the things that's been consistent in my, we were in the shipping business, which means we came across a lot of activity with tugs and tug and barges and assist in ship assists and whatnot, and that led us to become familiar with FOSS and that acquisition. And then we ended up buying a lot of fuel and resources to power the vessels, and that got us kind of into the fuel and lubricants business. And then we had a lot of customers and relationships in common with, and because we're transporting cargo, and that sort of was a natural progression into the air cargo business, and it sort of continues on. So one of the things that I've really always admired about the ownership mindset is, we didn't buy a shipping company one day and then go out and buy a bakery another. There's a logical tie between all of these businesses, and that's really, I think, what allows us to be uniquely suited to provide multiple solutions for single customers if that's what meets their needs. So this is, again, just an illustration of that, and I know this is being recorded, so if people want to look at this in a little bit more depth, I'm not going to drag you through each acquisition. So go ahead to the next slide. So a big part of any company, and certainly very much at the heart of what we do, is being a good corporate citizen. Part of the reason that my position exists here in Alaska, in addition to business development, public policy, and really just working to assist the leadership of our companies in serving our customers, is philanthropy and community support. We have an Alaska Regional Giving Committee that is staffed by the key senior manager from each one of our operating companies. And in 2020, we did about $552,000 in grants. And in addition to that, we do a lot of in-kind support, whether it's flying things to rural Alaska in times of crisis, or just being regular participants in various nonprofit things. I think one of the things that we're most proud of is our long-term involvement with programs like ALPAR and the Flying Cans program, where on a consistent basis, even since before we did the acquisition of Northern Air Cargo in 2006, just providing donated flying of cans and recyclables from rural Alaska back into Anchorage so that they can get recycled. Probably some of you recently on the news saw a profile story that was done with Milena Savigny out at Tote on our efforts to help get books out to rural Alaska. And there's a very, very long list of various nonprofits and organizations that we try to be stalwart supporters of. Our companies, in the vein of, you can't be all things to all people. Our shareholders and our management teams have really tried to rally around youth development and post-secondary education. That doesn't mean we don't support other things like the arts, but when it comes to our grant giving, and these are things that are, you don't see a lot of them in the public eye, because we really try to take a no strings attached. We entertain proposals from various organizations throughout the year. And we like a please and a thank you, and we like to know that funds are being spent in the manner that they were represented. But other than that, we believe that our nonprofit community here is very responsible in administering the resources that we're able to make available, and we're happy to be a part of that. And it's very much in our DNA. This photograph is one that really kind of highlights some of the softer stuff that we try to do to make our presence in Alaska a little bit more meaningful. And it kind of, to me, kind of speaks to the collaboration. This is actually the high school graduating seniors in the village of Antioch a few years back. We instituted a program at Northern Air Cargo several years ago when we acquired Aloha Air Cargo in Hawaii. We decided that it would be fun to bring fresh flower leis to the graduating seniors in all of our rural Alaska communities. So it's just one of the fun traditions that we do to try to be involved in the community. So you can go down to the next slide. So this next slide is a little less. So I showed you an org chart that kind of showed you how we look at Saltchuk more globally. This is Alaska specific. So if you're trying to drill down and figure out what is Saltchuk in Alaska, again, I've made reference to the Swiss Army knife. It really is nice to work for a company where we can lock arms with one another when we need to move something from basically anywhere in the world to rural Alaska. It's nice to be able to share with our customers that we literally do not have any corporate mandate that these companies work together. But what drives the need for these companies to work together is when our customers come to us and say, I need a multimodal solution. Oftentimes we can propose something that's a value proposition, but at the end of the day, it's really acting in the best interest of the customer. So if that means that somebody totally different outside of our family of companies is the strongest partner for somebody like Carlisle to work with to get something to Anchorage, then that's what we'll do. And that'll continue to be a hallmark of our value proposition for our customers. So really that sort of concludes. I don't know if I have any more slides there. Well, actually I do, because that concludes my canned presentation, if you will, talking about the company. But I was asked to sort of share some thoughts on the impacts of the pandemic, or as I've come to refer to COVID as the 2020 four-letter word that has a D on the end of it. I think we're all looking forward to getting on with it. These bullets here sort of put it in a nutshell for us. We did see some early impacts on marine cargo transport, especially in the early days when the retailers were seeing a lot of pressure on consumables. Many of you probably remember the Please Don't Panic press conference from the Port of Anchorage. I'm happy to report that the supply chain stayed intact the entire time. There was just a little bit of a rubbernecking in terms of actual manufacturing and consumption that stabilized pretty quick. And I think we all, if anyone's been to a Home Depot or a Lowe's in the past 6 or 8 months, we all know that demand in other places spiked as well. I built a gazebo for my daughter's wedding in the backyard this summer, and I don't think I touched any less than every Home Depot and every hardware store in town just to get the things that I needed. I can't count the number of times I left the house to go get a couple of things and had to make 2 or 3 stops. So that helped on the marine side. The consumption was up, and we saw pretty good recovery in Q4. Air cargo actually remained steady through the relief support that we saw. A lot of the CARES Act funding drove spending, a lot of government programs in terms of getting things out to rural Alaska. And then, of course, we do a lot of e-commerce transport, whether it's Amazon or even Walmart and Target. A lot of consumption by rural Alaskans. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Rural Alaska, I think, has discovered that there's a lot that they can do to improve the economic situation by taking advantage of the free shipping opportunities. And it certainly is a good piece of business for us. If you remember a story that my sister told me, who lives in Nome. She ordered some new tires for her truck, nice studded snow tires. And she ordered them off of Amazon and using her Amazon Prime account. And they were shipped to her doorstep in Nome, free shipping. But it was interesting because on the air cargo side, we actually moved those tires. And you really start to get a sense of what that subsidy is on the part of these large companies. And it's one of the things I think as we think about Alaska. We've always, as a kid who grew up in the bush, and I think even we still see it in Alaska, sometimes it's the, free shipping except Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. We seem to be past a lot of that with these large integrators, but I hope it continues on, because that's a real threat. There's a lot of people in rural Alaska that become very addicted to free shipping, and if someday someone at Amazon wakes up and decides that that's not a good idea anymore, it's going to send a heck of a shock through the economy. Energy distribution negatively impacted primarily because of the curtailed North Slope activity, and then lack of tourism, right? We did a lot of work with the cruise lines and our lubricants and fuels business. And then on the North Slope, we're hoping to see a little bit of a bounce back, but I'll talk about challenges ahead here on the next slide. Trucking logistics, again, reduced demands driven largely by curtailed North Slope activity. Carlisle is very much a logistics company. A lot of work done out of the Port of Tacoma, coming up on vessels north, but also very focused on trucking up to the North Slope, as most of you know. So it was a challenging year for them. Next slide, and my final slide is really just looking forward. Again, if I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, but I think we feel pretty strongly that recovery ongoing, pretty prolific there, are pretty prophetic there. But tourism and North Slope activity are kind of the two lagging items that we're watching and are concerned about. Hopefully this summer we'll see a visitor industry bouncing back, at least on the road system. And I'm sure you're all aware there's still some ongoing efforts to get some cruise ship activity too. And our ability to supply that industry with everything from consumables that passengers require on the vessels, as well as petroleum products and whatnot, is significant. And then of course the North Slope issues, whether you're concerned about the environmental policy of the Biden administration or just current court cases like the Willow decision slowing things down, it's definitely something we're keeping an eye on. And then I think there's no doubt about our commitment to Alaska. We're not only interested in being here for the long term and are committed to it. Our shareholders love the state. They have a home here, and they love to get here as much as they possibly can. And we're always looking for new opportunities to grow in the state, kind of in our wheelhouse with transportation and petroleum services. We look at Alaska as a place where there's good demand for the skill sets that we offer. And we look forward to being a part of Alaska's very bright future for generations to come. So with that, I think I've shared what I had planned, and would be happy to take any questions from folks. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about Saltchuk, and again, whether here online or just in person, I'm around and about, and would be happy to have further discussions with anyone. So I thank you for the time, and I'll open it up to questions, or whatever my handler Tara tells me I'm supposed to be doing next.
Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A, and I'll be happy to read them aloud. We did have some questions that came from AEDC. Let's see. So we have, Saltchuk has a suite of operating companies. What kinds of advantages does that create? Any drawbacks?
Well, I think, as I've referenced a couple of times, that the advantage to having a suite of operating companies is we can really offer solutions to multiple problems to a single customer. But again, our mantra is, if that's what serves the best interest of the customer, there can be drawbacks to that, in that because we don't label everything Saltchuk, it creates a little bit of brand confusion in the market. There are a lot of folks over the years who have said, why don't you guys just put everything under one banner? For us, it's simply a matter of, number one, sort of respecting the brands that have all been acquired, When we think about Carlisle, we think about maintaining our relationship with Pat and Harry McDonald and John McDonald. And when we think about Northern Air Cargo, we think about the Schulten family. And when we think about Nonick, we think about John and Mary Whitty. It's just really important for us to maintain that connectivity. A big part of our growth strategy is to be able to point back to our previous acquisitions. But it does sometimes create confusion. When I've been doing presentations to all of our freshman legislators down in Juneau via Zoom, and there's a lot of lights that go off with folks say, "Oh, we didn't know you own them." And so if there's a drawback, we might create a little bit of confusion about who we are and what fits under our umbrella. But we think the advantages accrue to the customer at a much higher level. So hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, I haven't seen any other questions come through. One of the questions we also had was, are there any technologies or behaviors that you're closely tracking because of the impact that could have on your business?
Well, I think each sector has a different set of variables. I mean, if you're just running through them quickly, I think the biggest thing that we have going on now from a capital investment point of view is investing in new technologies, and that's the LNG conversions on the Orca ships. In our world, the biggest driver for that is our commitment to the environment. And at this point in time, it's not exactly something that pencils out on its face, but it's a long-term commitment to making sure that we're good corporate citizens and good stewards of the environment. There's a lot of technology obviously involved in that. I think when we look at the aviation side of the business, we're paying close attention to everything from unmanned aerial vehicles. We get approached by folks all the time about battery operated aircraft and different types of fuels and whatnot. So we try to stay in those conversations while at the same time staying really focused on our day-to-day activities.
Awesome. So I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anybody has any questions afterwards, please feel free to send them to me. I can get them directly to Dave. Dave, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. We know you're a busy guy. And then I think all of our attendees as well. We know everyone's busy. And then of course, our sponsor, Alaska Executive Search and Bradison Management Group. We really appreciate it. And we will see you guys next month.
Great. Thanks very much. Thanks everyone for tuning in today.
Thank you guys.